Bottom line of Daf Chav Gimel Amid Beis, explaining the machlokes between Reb Meir and the Chacham, where Reb Meir says that Irving could disqualify Dr. Black's aid or dayan, and the Chacham said, you can't do that. So Amar Reb Yochanan, Ki Asa Ravin, Amar Reb Yochanan, when Ravin arrived, he said in the name of Reb Yochanan, Reisha, the Reisha is talking about Be'edim Psulin V'dayonim Ksherim, where Irving said that both Abi's Edim and Dayonim were disqualified. And we find out, independently verified, that Dr. Black's Edim are no good. So Rameir is of the opinion that Migu de Paslay Edim, since it's true what Irving said about Dr. Black's witnesses, so Paslay Nami Daine, we believe him also about the judges. Seifa is the other way around. B'dayonim Sulin V'edim Kisherim, where we find out that what Irving said about the judges is true. The Edim are still assumed to be kosher, but we say the Migu de Paslay Dayanim, Rameir holds that since we believe him about the Bayanim, Paslay Nami Edim. So the Gemara says, look, I could see that you could say that Irving really doesn't have negias about disqualifying judges, because you can get other judges. Maskla Rava Bishleim and Migu de Paslay Edim, Paslay Nami Daine, we're going to believe Irving about disqualifying the judges. You know, he doesn't have that much of negela maisa, because you can get other judges. Ikabedina achrina. Elamigu de Paslay Daine, since he disqualifies the judges, Paslay Nami Edim, we believe him about the witnesses. He's very negela maisa about witnesses. You're not going to be able to find other witnesses. For Edim Suleka says, there is another set of witnesses. Says the Gemara, if you're talking about where there's two sets of witnesses, but if there's no other set of witnesses, because he's Nagaya B'davar, then Hainun de Rav Dimi. That was that shot we said already, that Rav Dimi says it's talking about where it's two separate sets of witnesses. Says the Gemara, Ike Beinayu Migu. The difference between them is whether we say this swara of since. The Mar Savar Amrinon Migu, this Kiasa Ravin in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, we say this svara that since Irving was shown to be true about the witnesses, we believe him about the Dayanim. O Mar Savar Le Amrinon Migu, we don't say since. Gufa, now the Gemara analyzes a statement that Reish Lakish said about Rameir. Amar Reish Lakish, Pek Haidish Yomer Dover Zeh. Can a holy mouth like Rav Meir say such a thing that one litigant could disqualify the witnesses of the other witness? Tani Edai. So at that time, in the discussion earlier, we suggested it's talking about only one witness. We discarded that pshat. But that was what was discussed. But that's not what we're looking into now. We're looking into the fact that Reish Lakish will refer to Rav Meir as Pek Kodesh, as this holy mouth. So on this, the Gemara asks, would Reish Lakish refer to Rav Meir as a holy mouth? Do you know who Reish Lakish is? If somebody had the merit to see Reish Lakish in action in the Beis Medrash, ki'ilu oiker harim, his sharpness, his genius was like one who uproots mountains with teichnen zebezeh and grinds them together. In other words, his ability to make arguments was so incredible. Amar Ravina, so Ravina says, so what? That doesn't mean that Reish Lakish can't say about Rameir that he has a Pek Kaddish. It says more than that about Rameir. V'aloi kol haraya Rameir b'beis medrash, whoever saw Rameir in the Beis Medrash, ki'ilu oiker harei harim. It's as if he uprooted the most mountainous of mountains, b'teichnen zebezeh, and ground them one into another. By the way, this is a pastime by Klal Yisrael to make it known the greatness of our leaders. because then people will look up to them, want to emulate them, want to listen to them, want to trust them. So the Gemara says, so it's not a Pella that Reish Lakish would say about Rav Meir. Rather, the Gemara revises what it wanted to comment. First wide line of Daf Kav Daled Amud Aleph. I'm sorry we got to such a late start, and I'm still worried about the computer. It doesn't, for some reason, it doesn't look like it's charging. I don't know why. I can't figure out why this is. You could be sure that I'm going to be ordering a new charger.
Is the outlet working?
Yeah.
Daled Amud Aleph?
Chav Daled Amud Aleph, yes.
The wide line, the first one.
Okay. Says the Gemara, Hachi Kamer, Bo re'ei kama mechavavin zeh ezeh. Come and see the Chachamim in Eretz Yisrael, how much they loved one another and how much they respected one another. This was a trademark of the Talmud Yerushalmi, that they were very, very close to one another. Ki had the Yosef Rebbe, V'ka'amar Rebbe was sitting, the great Rebbe was sitting and saying, Asur lahatmin es hatzayin. On Shabbos, it's forbidden to insulate cold, to keep it cold. Now, of course, there's nothing wrong with keeping something cold, but we're afraid that if you insulate something cold, you might come to insulate something hot.
Oh, no.
Amal of fun of Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yosi. So Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Rabbi Yosi, said to Rabbi, Abba hita lahat min esatzayin. My father, Rabbi Yosi, permitted to insulate cold. He wasn't worried. Amalei, so immediately Rabbi retracted. Kfar harazakin. The elder already paskin, strike what I say, you're allowed to insulate cold. Now that's a little bit of a pella, because Amra Papa Bayurei Kama Mechavim Zeh. Look at how much respect they had one for another. The Ilu Rabbi Yosi came, if Rabbi Yosi was alive, he would be submissive and sit humbly before Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, before Rabbi. Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yosi Rabbi Yosi was in the same stature as his father, and he sat humbly before Rabbi. And yet, even though Rabbi Yosi would have sit submissively before Rabbi if he was alive, Rabbi yet said, Kfar harazakin, he retracted what he said about not insulating cold, and said that the elder already paskined, and retracted what he said. That's how much respect they had for one another. Now the Gemara is going to contrast the Chachmei Bavel to the Chachmei Eretz Yisrael. Very interesting. The contrast, the Chachmei Bavel to the Chachmei Eretz Yisrael, bringing down psukim and explaining them homiletically. Ma'idich siv, v'ekach li shnei maklois, I will take two staffs, le'echad karasi noyam, one I will call sweetness, u'le'echad karasi chayvlin, and one I will call banger. Noyam elu talmidei chacham sheberetz Yisrael. These are the scholars in Eretz Yisrael that were sweet to one another. Sheman imin zeh lezeh b'halacha. They're sweet to one another in halacha. Chayvlim, bangers. That's a pickleball phrase. Bangers. Chayvlim elu talmidei chacham shebebavel. These are the scholars in Bavel. Shemechavlim zeh lezeh b'halacha. They warred with each other and they got hot under the collar with each other in their battles in halacha. Another pasuk. Vayomer Eila Shnei Bnei Hayitzar Ha'oimdim. These are the two sons of oil standing there. Ushnayim Zeisim Oleha. And two olive trees nearby. Yitzar, oil. Amr Yitzar Elu Talmidei Chacham Sheberetz Yisrael. This is a metaphor for the Talmidei Chacham in Eretz Yisrael, shenoichin zeh lezeh b'halacha, they were smooth with one another, they were easy with one another in halacha, kishem and zayis, like the smoothness of olive oil, u'shnayim zeisim aleha, and 2 olive trees nearby, elu Talmidei Chacham shebebavel, shemeroirin zeh lezeh b'halacha, that acted bitterly with one another with halacha, like, remember we said that the Yaina had an alei zayis in its mouth, which was very bitter. Zayis, like an olive. A third pasuk. Well, so far we're holding up over here. Maybe it's like the Shemin on Hanukkah. Or maybe it's Barry that came on. And Marsha, you're looking spiffy tonight.
Put it like chopped liver?
No.
Chopped liver tastes good.
No.
Ooh.
And Mark, let us see you. You know, we miss you so much. Why can't we see you? Mo is here. It's nice to have Richard Rosenzweig here. Baruch Hashem, a nice olam over here. I just hope we're not going to lose everybody. Eddie Chazan. Anyway, says the Gemara, quoting a third pasuk. Ve'esa einai, I lifted my eyes. Ve'era, and I saw. V'hinei shtayim noshim yotzes, 2 women were going out. V'ruach b'chanfeihem, with wind blowing through their wings. So they were angelic forms. Ulaheina knafayim kikanfei achasida, they had wings like the wings of a stork. V'tiseno efa, and they carried the measuring efa bein hashemayim ubein haaretz, between the heaven and between the earth. An interesting vision as we welcome in Dr. Bruce Eisenberg. It's about time. I mean, I had already called out the Pinkertons to look for you. He's old enough to know what a Pinkerton is. Anyway, so what is this vision? V'omer el hamalach hadover bi, and I said, the Navi said, I said to the angel who was speaking to me, Ana hema molichos eso efa, where are you taking the efa? V'yomer elai, and he said to me, livna loy bayis be'eretz shina, to build a house in Eretz Shina. Shina is Bavel. Am Reb Yechon Mishim Reb Shimon ben Yochai, zu chanufa, v'gases haruach, this is flattery and arrogance, sheyordu lebavel, that descended to Bavel. So right away the Gemara asks over here, whoa, is arrogance made a home in Bavel? V'gases haruach, and did arrogance lebavel nachas make a home in Bavel? 10 measures of arrogance came down to the world. Tisha notla elam, 9 measures were taken by Elam, the achas kol elam kula, and the rest of the world. So it seems to be arrogance made a home in Elam and not in Bavel. So the Gemara says in lebavel nachas. Initially it descended to Bavel, but ishtarvuve ishtarviv le'elam. It made its way over to Elam. And Dekanami dichsiv livna lo bayis be'eretz shina. In the singular, Chanufa, flattery, found its home in Bavel, not arrogance. Shmamina. Says the Gemara, I v'amamar simin legasis haruach anias. A sign of arrogance is poverty. V'anias l'bavel nachas, and Bavel was impoverished. Says the Gemara, no, the sign of arrogance of poverty isn't poverty of money, it's poverty of Torah. Says the Gemara, my anias Torah. And that was in Elam. Bavel had Torah. Elam did not have Torah. We have a small sister, B'shadayim ein la, it doesn't have any breasts. Amar Rabbi Yochanan zu Elam, shezochsa lilmoid, they had learning, but v'lo zochsa lelamed. They didn't have teaching. The breasts promote nurturing. They didn't have teaching. Says the Gemara, we know that Bavel is called Shinar. What's the name Bavel? My Bavel. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Bavel is Belula b'Mikra. It was saturated with Torah, Blula b'Mishnah, saturated with Mishnah, and Blula b'Talmud, and saturated with Gemara. And now here we have a self-deprecating comment of the Babylonian Talmud about itself. B'makashakim oishivani, in dark you settled me, k'meisei olam, like the dead of the world. Amar Reb Yirmiyah zet Talmuda shel Bavel, that's the learning of Bavel, and it's considered dark. Rashi says, she'eim noichen zeh im zeh, they don't get along easy with each other, and therefore that it affected their learning. Okay, now, as we continue praying, that, you know what I could think of, the only thing I could think of is maybe the charging is working, but the sign on my computer about the charging is not working. That's possible. That's possible. Otherwise we're in trouble here. It's just showing.
It doesn't show the little, like, the light.
Oh, but it says hour and 20 minutes to full charge. That's good.
That means it's charging then.
Yeah, but it's not showing. Usually it shows the battery filling up. It's not showing it.
Debbie, if it says hour and 20 minutes till fully charged, it means that it's actively charging.
Yeah, you think so?
Yeah,
Okay.
most times, possession.
Okay, that's a gezerah from A. Barbach. It's almost like a gezerah min hashamayim.
Wow.
Okay, so says the Heilige Mishnah, and it's so wonderful to be here. I'm looking what's going on over here. I think we have 29 Zoomers here already. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 25. Yeah, 29 Zoomers, besides the 4 wonderful people we have over here. By the way, regards to everyone from AB who's joining us here in person. Says the Gemara, Amaloi neman alai Abba. So here, we got our litigants, Irving and Dr. Black, and Dr. Black says, I accept my father as a judge. Neman alai avicha, I accept your father. Neman alai shloisha roya bakar, I accept 3 cattle herd. Rameir says, if Dr. Black doesn't like the verdict, he could back out and say, yeah, what do you accept from shepherds? The Chacham say, look, he said he accepts it, and he can't back out. Now here's another case. If Irving was supposed to swear to Dr. Black, now when you swear, you're supposed to swear with Hashem's name on a Sefer Torah, and Dr. Black says to Irving, you know what? Darli b'chai roishcha. It's enough if you swear to me by your life. Then, afterwards, Dr. Black wants to back out. Rameir says he could back out. You can't back out. Amar Rav Dimi, Breder Rav Nachman, Breder Rav Yosef, Kegain de Kable Alei Bechad. He accepted his father, or Irving's father, as one of the judges. Now the Gemara says, let's see, there's 2 ways that it could be. It could be that the claim was that Irving owes him money. And AB says, I accept it, and therefore I'm moichel, if they paskin against me, I'm moichel the money. That's one way. Or it could be a situation where they're claiming that Dr. Black has to pay. And he says, if they rule against me, I'm moichel and I'll pay. Now, I'll pay is a little bit more. Because I'll pay means that he's going to have to take out of pocket. There maybe we would think that he has to ratify it with a kinyan suda. So let's see the Gemara inside. The Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Mishmul, Machloikis b'mochalach, where he accepts the judge and says that if he rules against me, I'm moichel Irving what he has to pay me. Aval be'etenlach, where he says I'll accept the judge and I'll give the money if he rules against me, without making a kinyan, divrei kol, maybe even the Chachamim Amoida, that Yochel Arzabai, that Dr. Black could retract. Rabbi Yochanan be'etin loch machlokes. The machlokes is where he says, I'll give it and I'll trust the verdict. And there's a machlokes whether he could back out or not. Ibaylu, according to this version of Rabbi Yochanan, be'etin loch machlokes, aval b'machaloch, where he says, look, I'll be meichel and I'll accept it. Divra kol eini yachal asabay. Everybody holds that you can't retract. Or dilma bein bezu machlokes. So maybe they're arguing with both. Tajma, damaram rava machlokes be'etin loch. Aval b'machaloch. But if he says that, listen, I'll forgive the money that Irving owes me, then even Divra Kol Ein Yachal Asabay, even Rameir holds that it can't back out. So B'Shleima Be'etin Loch Machlokes Aval B'Machalach Divra Kol Ein Yachal Asabay. So then Rava says like Rabbi Yochanan, Rava Damik Rabbi Yochanan. Eli Amrit. But if we say Bein Bezu Machlokes, that they're arguing by both, so then Rava, who says by Machalach everybody agrees that you can't back out, Rava Damar Kaman. Rava is not going to rule against the Chachamim, he's not going to rule against the majority. So it says Gemara, but Rava could argue on Rabbi Yochanan. Rava Tamid and Avshei Kamer. He holds that they argue only about Etin Lach, where a kinyan is necessary, but by Machalach everybody agrees that you can't back out. The next case, if one is chayiv, if Irving is chayiv an oath to Dr. Black, and Dr. Black says, normally you have to swear by Hashem with a Sefer Torah, it's enough darli b'chaye roishcha, it's enough to swear by your life. Rameir says that Dr. Black could back out. Now, what kind of shvuah was Irving going to make? Now, there's cases where you swear and you don't have to pay, or there's cases where you swear and you could collect. Isn't it talking about a case where Irving was going to swear and not pay, and therefore Dr. Black accepted? And that's talking about the Havelei Kimachalach. That's talking about a case where he says that I'm Michael, right? In this case, it would be Michael, and that Irving doesn't have to pay him. And yet, even over there, Rav Meir says that he's not allowed to retract. So you see that they that even over there they argue even by Machalach. Says Gemara loy, but oisen anishban b'neitlan. It's talking about a case where Irving swears to collect. There are times where you swear to collect, and there where AB says I'm Michael, it means that he's saying that I accept the weaker swear ve'etinlach, and I'll pay you, Irving. Da'avik etinlach. Says the Gemara. So then, why did I have to argue twice? Why do you have to argue with the case of Abba Avicha? And also in the case of where he's swearing, va'atana le'reisha, says tana toila b'das acherim. It gives the case where Dr. Black says, I accept my father or Irving's father, which is somebody else. V'tana toila b'das atzmai. And then it says the case where he accepts the decision of his opponent. V'tzricha. If he says that I accept my father, your father, there Rav Meir says he could back out. Because there he thought the ruling would go according to him. He didn't really make up his mind to give it to Irving, because he figured that it's a slam dunk and his father or Irving's father would paskin against Irving. Who says he's going to give it to him? But in the case where he says, I accept, even if Irving swears on his life, he knows that Irving is going to swear according to his argument. He knows that Irving is going to swear that way, and therefore he was Gamer Omakne. V'yashminam Baha, only in the case of the swearing. B'hakam Rabbanan, because the Rabbanan say in that case he knew that Irving would swear according to his position, and therefore he was Gomer Maknei. Avabahi, but with the father or his father, he doesn't know, that he could back out when it sees it doesn't go his way. So tzricha, they have to argue in both cases. And it's really nice to see over here so many people joining us. As I see Eddie Chazan, he looks like he's freezing. He must be in the North Pole. Says the Gemara, Amarei Shlakish, Machloikis lefnei Gmardin. This that Rav Meir says that he could retract, and the Rabbanan say he can't retract, that's only before the verdict is issued. But after the verdict is issued, nobody says he could retract. Rabbi Yochanan says even no, not even. Rabbi Yochanan la'achar gmar din machlokes. The machlokes is after the verdict is issued. Ibayelu la'achar gmar din machlokes. Is it only after the verdict is issued? Aval lefnei gmar din, even the Rabbanan agree that you could retract. Aval lefnei gmar din divrei akol yachal azbay. You could retract. Oidilma bein bezu machlokes. So they arguing by both. Tashma Dama Rava. Kibbal olav karev apostle, if he accepts upon himself karev, a relative, or one who is puzzle, lefnei gmardin, if it's before the verdict, yachal azabay. La'achadin gmardin ein yachal azabay. So I amid bishleima la'achadin machlokes, aval lefnei gmardin divrei akol yachal azabay. Everybody agrees you could retract. So Rava Damak Rabbi Yochanan. Rava says like Rabbi Yochanan, that because if he argues by both, and the Rabbanan say that even before the Gemara Din you can't retract, would Rava paskin against the majority? So Rava Damak Rabbi Yochanan v'ali b'Rabbanan. Eli yomid bein bezu machlokes, that even before the verdict, the Chacham say you can't retract. How could Rava paskin against the Chacham? Rava Damak Kaman. The machlokes is only after the verdict, but before the verdict, everybody holds you could retract. Shmamina. Sholach le Rav Nachman bar Rav le Rav Nachman bar Yaakov. Rav Nachman bar Rav sent the following missive to Rav Nachman bar Yaakov. Yelamdeinu Rabbeinu. Teach us our rabbis. Teach us our rabbis. The fnei gmar din machlokes or le'achar gmar din machlokes? Is the machlokes before the verdict between Rameir and Rabbanan or after? Va'alacha kedivrei mi. And then who do we paskin like? Sholach le, he says, no, before the gmar din, everybody holds you could retract. The machlokes is after the verdict. Sholach le le'achar gmar din machlokes. Va'alacha kedivrei chachamim, that after the verdict, you're not allowed to retract. Rav Ashi Amahochi Shalachle. He wanted to know about the other variables that we were talking about. Is the machlokes between Rameh and Rabbanan only where it's Dr. Black says I accept this judge for a matter where Irving is going to have to for a matter where I will have to pay, right? Be'etein lach machlokes. Or it's about him waiving something that Irving will have to give to him. And then Valacha Kedivrei Mi. Is that like the Rabbanan or like Rameir? Shalach like, no, in the case of Machalach, where he's waiving that which Irving would have to give him, in such a case, nobody holds that he could retract, because their opinion is not necessary. Be'etein lach machlokes, the machlokes is where he says, I will give it with such a judge, or the halacha k'divrei chachamim, that he's not allowed to retract. Besura masni hachi, in Surah that was the version, but pumpadisa masni hachi, Amar Rab Chanina bar Shalmi yosholchu leimi bei Rav l'Shmuel, they sent from the academy of Rav to Shmuel, Yelamdeinu Rabbeinu, lefnei gmar din. If it was a situation before the verdict. Now, we said before the verdict, normally everybody holds you could retract. But vikanu miyadai. Dr. Black said he's accepting either this oath or he's accepting this judge, and he cemented it with a Kenyan Sudar, my. No, there says the Gemara, no. Then Dr. Black is cemented in. Shalach lahu ein la'achar Kenyan klum. There's no retraction after making a Kenyan. Now, I'm sorry that Bruce, you're here and your son isn't here. Usually your son is with us. We're missing you. You have Kinyan Masechta Itis again?
We have a big Kinyan Masechta program is tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know my son had a Kinyan Masechta Shabbos to Shabbos.
Right.
I know my son gave a model lesson over there. Anyway, we want to see you more often. Otherwise, I'll call the chiropractor guild and complain about it. Says the Gemara, says the Mishnah, or as Barry would say, the Heilige Mishnah. See, Barry, I don't forget. Barry, you're looking good.
I'm also good looking. You didn't say that part.
I was joking.
Jerry, the rough doesn't lie.
Hey, Marshall.
I'm still waiting for Mark Frankel to show his face.
I love you, Barry.
Ve'elu hein apsulin. The following are puzzle to give testimony. Hamasachik b'kuvya, people that play dice. V'amal v'beribis, people that give loan with interest. We're going to see also that take a loan with interest. Umafricha yoinim, pigeon racers. They bet on the pigeons. V'soicharei shvius, and those that do commerce with shmita. We know it says in the pasuk about the shmita year, la'achla, you could eat the crops of shmita, but v'loy l'schayri, you can't do commerce with it. Amr b'shem b'tchila yekarinai son oisvei shvius. You know what? By shmita, you're allowed to take into the house only what you need for immediate use. People that hoard a lot of stuff of shvius, they would be pasul le'edus. However, Mishirabu ha'anosim, once the wicked tax collectors abounded, then they had to keep a lot of stuff in the house just to pay the taxes. So then chazru l'krois and soicharei shvius, that only disqualified for testimony those that did business with shvius. Now, that which it says players of dice, Amar Rabbi Yehuda emasai, when is people that play with dice, when are they disqualified testimony? That's only bisman she'ein lam unas elahu. That's only if that's their only thing that they do. Because therefore they're worthless to society. They don't learn Torah. They don't do anything gainful for the world. Therefore they're pasul le'edus. Aval yesh lam unas sheloihu. But if they do something else gainfully, they're plumbers, they're tailors, they're accountants, ksherim, they're kosher. So that
Forget electrician.
right. Even as we scrape the bottom of the barrel, even electricians. Now, the right at the bottom under that would be car places. Now, says the Gemara.
Oh, a little love.
Says the Gemara. Actually, people that play with dice, there's another completely other reason why to disqualify them. And throughout Shas, this is the reason that we give. And that is that if, let's say, Barry gambles, he never expects to lose. And therefore, when Marshall takes the stuff away from him, he takes his, winnings, it's like theft. Because since Barry never thought that he was going to lose, he never really made up his mind to give it. So therefore, people that gamble and take the money are considered like thieves. Now, this idea is called asmachta, that if a person never thought that he would lose, then he never had in mind to give it, and we say asmachta loikanya. Now, therefore, gamblers would be thieves, and therefore they would be disqualified testimony. So that's what the Gemara's first reason is. Misachek bekuvya, playing dice, my kovid. What's wrong with playing dice? What's wrong with that? Says the Gemara, you know what's wrong with that? Amarami bar Chama mishum davi asmachta. Because Barry never thought he was going to lose, so he never was gamar or makne, and therefore when Marshall takes the pot, Marshall is really stealing because of asmachta lekanya. Rav Sheshes Amar.
Kufi is dice. We always thought it was cards.
Rav Sheshes Amar. Rav Sheshes says it's dice. Rav Sheshes Amar. Kol ki gavna. Such a thing lav asmachtahi. Barry knows there's a chance he's going to lose. He knows the odds. That's not an asmachta. Then why is he disqualified from Eidos? It's because Barry and Marshall are worthless. That's why. Look how shocked Yitzi Muller is. They're worthless. They have there's no saving grace. They're not learning. They're not doing chesed. They're not furthering the growth of the world. So therefore, that's why they're puzzled. You can't trust a person that's worthless. Says Gemara, my beinayu. What's the difference if the reason is al sasmachto or the reason is because they're worthless? That's only if they do something else, an electrician, a car shop. So if the reason is al worthless, they're not worthless. If the reason is al sasmachta, so then they're possible. So the Gemara says, l'chayra we see from the end of the Mishnah that the reason is because they're worthless. That's only if they don't have another profession. If they don't have another profession, ksherim. So Rabbi Yehuda is clarifying that the reason of the Tanakama is because they're worthless, not because of a smachta. It's because of settling the world. So Kashal Rami Bar Chama is shver according to Rami Bar Chama, who says that the reason of the Tanakama is asmachta loikanya, and therefore they're considered thieves. So the Gemara says, what's the problem? Rabbi Yehuda argues under Rabbanan. V'chi tema pligi Rabbanan alei to Rabbi Yehuda argues on the Tanakama. But V'amar Rabbi Shimon Levi kol makom she'amar Rabbi Yehuda, wherever in Shas Rabbi Yehuda says a Mosai or ubamed dvar mamurim, he's not coming to argue, he's coming to clarify. Eina el lefaresh divrei chachamim. So Rabbi Yochanan says, well, a Mosai lefaresh. When he says when, that's to clarify. Ubamed, when it says bamed dvar mamurim, that could be an opposing opinion. That's lachlok. But everybody agrees, udekule alma a Mosai lefareshu. Everybody agrees that when it says a Mosai, it's coming to clarify. So how could Rami Bar Chama say that the Tanakama's reason is also asmachta loikanya when Rabbi Yehuda says that a Mosai is a clarification, and it's because he doesn't have any other employment. But if he does have an employment, it would be good. And it's not because it's thievery. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. Gavra karamis. Who says that a Mosai is a clarification? That's Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. So you're asking from Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi on Rami Bar Chama. Rami Bar Chama could argue on Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Says Gavra karamis. Mar savar pligi or mar savar loy pligi. I'm just going to pause a moment over here to change the channel.